The problem I find with that is, like, all it takes is one person who is in my circumstance who goes to their grave without finding the truth and love of Christ for that to seemingly fall apart.
In fact, let me ask you this. What is your, according to what you believe, is your objection to Christianity evidence-based or something else?
If God really exists, why did he allow me to suffer? Where was God during this time? Maybe you have asked that as well. Maybe you're still waiting for an answer. In this video, Dr. Frank Turek takes the very question head on, but with deep honesty. If you ever wrestle with doubt, with pain, or feel like God was hidden and perhaps silent, when you need him the most, stay with us. You're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, there's more going on than you realize.
Hi, what's your name?
Hey, I'm Luke.
Luke, go ahead.
So my question is, have you heard of the problem of divine hiddenness?
Yes.
I guess as background, problem of divine hiddenness is essentially a person who is a non-resistant non-believer, somebody who would answer the question that you proposed. If God did exist and you knew it, would you believe in him and serve him? The answer to that would be yes, but they cannot find themselves convinced that he does, no matter how hard they try.
Sure.
I would count myself among that number. I was raised Christian church, Christian school, very Christian community, and yet I find myself a fairly confirmed agnostic, despite quite a bit of research. So how do you reconcile a omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent God who desires a relationship with his creation, not being able to, well, okay, maybe that presupposes, but it appears to me that there should be no barrier that I would be able to place in my own heart that an omnipotent God would not be able to surmount. And the fact that he has the desire to surmount any barrier, it seems hard to reconcile. How would you reconcile that?
Okay, yeah, good question. Snellenberg has written much on this, the hiddenness of God. There are many different ways to address this issue, but let me just take one or two ways. It could be that God doesn't want you to become a believer right now. Let me give you an example of someone very prominent. There's a friend of mine who lives in Nebraska he's a Christian apologist, and he had another friend that wasn't a Christian, and he wanted this guy to be a Christian, so he actually gave him my book, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. And the guy said, I'm not reading that. That was written by a Christian. Well, yeah, of course, a Christian believes it, so he's going to write it. But they lost touch. 10 years later, my friend sees this guy, and he's a Christian. And he goes, what happened? He goes, I've been watching Jordan Peterson. And Jordan Peterson led me to Jesus. Jordan Peterson's not a Christian. And the reason that he's been watching Jordan Peterson is because he considered Jordan Peterson kind of an honest broker. Like he doesn't have a horse in this race. He's just trying to find the truth himself. And Jordan Peterson, being a non-Christian, helped lead this guy to Jesus when a Christian couldn't do it. So it's possible that maybe you're in that same position. Maybe you have people in your life and your circle of influence is going to expand, maybe years from now, to the point that it's big enough where God goes, okay. What's your name again? Luke. Luke, you're ready now. Now, I'm going to reveal more of myself to you, and now you're going to be able to influence these other people in your circle that wouldn't have been there if you had become a Christian 10 years ago. That's a possibility.
Yeah. The problem I found is that, I get much the same answer from a lot of my Christian friends who I've talked to is, God works in his own time. Many years from now, you could be a Christian. The problem I find with that is, like, all it takes is one person who is in my circumstance who goes to their grave without without finding the truth and love of Christ, for that to seemingly fall apart, in my
Okay, Luke,
opinion.
I'm not saying this is the case with you, but I'm saying it's the case in general with humanity. We all have a deceitful heart. We might not even know why we do half the things we do. We might say we're completely open, and in the recesses of our hearts, we're not.
Mm-hmm.
There's something between us and the truth, and we don't really want to accept the truth. In fact, let me ask you this. What is your, according to what you believe, is your objection to Christianity evidence-based or something else?
That's an interesting question. I'd say it was probably primarily evidence-based, but in more recent reflection, it's kind of occurred to me that kind of you can't talk somebody into the faith no more than you can like talk somebody out of it. Like that kind of has to be a more deeply felt spiritual realization. And you know, I have all of these kind of arguments rolling around in my head and tons of research I've done, but ultimately it appears to me that I would just have to have had an experience of God. And it's crazy because, you know, I grew up in the exact circumstances where that should have happened, and it was happening to everyone around me, and yet I got nothing. Or maybe I don't know, maybe I did get something and I didn't see it, but if I was meant to see it, I would have, I suppose.
Yeah, perhaps, or maybe it hasn't happened yet. God says, Jesus says, keep knocking, keep seeking. Sometimes the process of becoming a Christian is necessary to make you a deeper person when you become a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're going through these doubts and these struggles because 5 years from now you're going to become a Christian, and then you're going to have a ministry to people who go through doubts and struggles. So just to say that God, you haven't shown me yet, so you must not exist, is very presumptuous.
Sure.
Okay? God does work on his own time.
Mm-hmm.
And he's working through people like Jordan Peterson, even though Jordan Peterson, at least to this point, is not a Christian, and maybe God doesn't want him to be a Christian just yet. So I would say just be open, keep seeking. And let me say one other thing about this. Your psychology, my psychology, is not going to tell us what's true outside of our skull. Mm-hmm. Our psychology can deceive us. In fact, our psychology is such that we'll actually ignore evidence for irrational reasons. Let me give you an example. There are probably people in this room that cannot get on an airplane. You're scared to death to get on an airplane. Yet you know from an evidence perspective, the safest way to get anywhere is on an airplane. You should be more afraid to get in your car than to get on an airplane, because statistically, aviation is the safest way to get anywhere. Here we are allowing our psychology to overpower the evidence. Mm-hmm. Could that be the case when it comes to belief in God? Sure it could. This is why James says, he who continues to doubt is tossed to and fro as if you're on a ship in a storm. And C.S. Lewis writes pretty profoundly on this. Have you read Mere Christianity? Mm-hmm. He writes pretty profoundly on this when he says, you know, there were times when I was an atheist where Christianity just looked all too true. And then there have been times when I've been a Christian when I had such severe doubts. And he said that's where faith comes in, meaning trust, not blind faith. After you've established through reason that Christianity is true, you need to tell your doubts to get off, because you've already established that it's true by looking at the evidence. And the evidence doesn't change. Your psychology can change with the weather, or the bad pizza you had earlier today, or the fact that your favorite football team, the Dallas Cowboys, lost, right? Thankfully again. Your psychology will not necessarily tell you what's true about what's outside your skull. The evidence will. That's why you got to concentrate on the evidence.
Sure.
All right? Thank you, Luke. Appreciate it. Keep seeking. Hey, Luke, have you read I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist?
I'm not, but I intend to buy one of your books.
No, you're not buying it. You're just taking one. Just pick one off the table back there. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, no extra charge for this, but unless you read the book, you can't be saved. Okay? Look, I don't make the rules up, okay? Don't shoot the messenger.
We may not understand God's timing or his ways, but that doesn't mean he's absent. Sometimes the silence itself becomes a place where we learn to be open, to listen to him, and where our hearts become still enough to receive what we cannot before. The question isn't always, where's God? Isaiah chapter 55 verse 8 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord." This verse reminds us how wide the gap is between our understanding and his. Not because we have all the answers, but because deep down we know he is still God. In the video, Frank tells the story of a Christian who tried to lead his friend to Christ, but it didn't happen. Not right away. Not even the same conversation. 10 years later, he saw his friend again. And he told him he had become a Christian through Jordan Peterson, someone not even known as a Christian. That's how God works. He moves through our waiting, through our failures, and even through people we'd never expected. So if you're watching this and you're still wrestling, still unsure, still searching, don't lose heart. God is not bound by our timelines, our expectations, or even our understanding. He sees you. He knows you. And deep down inside, even if you never read the Bible or stepped into a church, God has already written something on your heart. Romans chapter 2 verse 15 says, "The law is written there, and your conscience bears witness to it." That quiet nudge, that moral pull, that longing for truth, it's not accident. It's evidence that he's already been reaching for you. And when the time is right, he'll make himself known. Until then, keep your heart open, because the story isn't over yet.